Today, I want to talk about the knower's mind as compared to the learner's mind. Now, it's a really interesting conversation, especially for coaches, because our profession demands that we should have a learner's mind, that we should be curious in every conversation that we have with any client. But that learner's mind does not extend outside the coaching conversation, or not in this one specific area anyway. So before I explain what I mean, let me take a step back. When we train to be coaches, we are trained in the same way that you're trained to be a teacher or a doctor or a nurse. There's somebody there to coach, there's somebody there to teach, there's somebody there to doctor or nurse. And in the case of the teacher, the nurse, and the doctor, those people are going on to an employed role usually. There are employed roles available as a rule. With coaching, that's not the case. There are not very many employed roles, and the competition for employed roles is fierce. So, another way of earning our living from coaching is associate coaching. And as we are probably all aware now, the big platforms, the rates they pay have dropped considerably over the last few years. When I say the platforms, I mean the big ones like Ezra, Lyra, BetterUp, CoachHub. The other way of getting people to coach, of finding clients, is to have a private practice. Now, whether our private practice sells to private clients or to organizations, we still have to do something around client acquisition. We still have to have a client acquisition process, because if we don't have clients, we don't have a coaching practice. Now, the 2023 and 2025 ICF Global reports both said that around 93% of coaches have a portfolio business, which means they have several income streams. And I tend to think of that as like a basket of eggs. So each of the eggs in our basket is a separate income stream. Now, one of those eggs might be associate work. Two or three of those eggs, if you work for different associate companies, they might be associate work. And the other eggs in that basket may be consulting or training or mentoring, or, I could go on. And sometimes the eggs in those baskets have nothing to do with coaching at all. We have one of our mentors who has a coaching business called Menopause in Schools. Some of the eggs in her baskets are textile art, running textile art workshops, and running them for the local art gallery in Manchester. So, they don't have to all be coaching eggs, coaching related eggs in that basket. But if you think of it as a basket of eggs, it's an easy way to get your head around it. Now, with associate work, we don't have to find the client. We can just rock up and coach. And that's why we only get a portion of the fee, because finding clients is the hard bit. Coaches don't fail to build thriving coaching practices because they're lousy coaches. That's almost never the reason. The reason that we fail to build thriving practices is because we can't find enough clients. And sometimes that doesn't matter. If we have, if we have another source of income, or, the eggs in our baskets keep us happy. If we wanted to coach as a nice to have, but we don't really mind. If we're retired and we only need the odd client, and it really doesn't matter whether or not that client's paying us anything very much at all, then I'm not dismissing those reasons, but they mean that the need for a robust client acquisition process that finds clients who are prepared to pay a professional rate for our coaching is not as pressing. So I'm talking to the coaches who do need to be paid a professional rate for their coaching because they want to make a living from this. Now, if 93% of us have a portfolio business, I'm talking to the people who would like to include coaching within that portfolio business. And I have a lot of clients. I've had a lot of clients over the years, and I talk to a lot of coaches who say to me, I have a consulting business, for example, but nobody really wants to pay for coaching. I'd really like to add it in because I can see the value it would offer, but they're not interested. Now, the reason they're not interested isn't that they're not interested in coaching, it's that they don't understand why they might want to add coaching into the mix that they're paying for. And the ability to articulate the value of coaching in a way that non-coaches can understand, that's marketing. Now, back to this idea of a knower's mind and a learner's mind. In the main, coaches are very clever people. I very rarely come across a daft coach. And because we're clever and often have had, good careers before we became coaches, we are used to being able to wing it. We are used to being able to improvise and for the thing that we improvise to work, whether that's a new recipe or, fixing something at home, or whether it's a work-based thing, whatever it is, we are used to being able to weigh up a situation, come up with a potential solution, and then improvise around that potential solution until we reach a workable outcome. And we think we can do that with client acquisition as well. And we can't. If we could, we wouldn't have this really high attrition rate in our business, in our profession. So what's the difference between our improvisation that we do as part of our daily lives, in work and at home and everywhere in between? What's the difference between that improvisation and the improvisation that we're doing around client acquisition that just isn't working? Well, it's actually very simple. When we improvise within areas of our existing knowledge and expertise, we tend to be able to come up with a reasonable solution. But marketing and client acquisition is completely outside of the majority of us marketing and lived knowledge and experience. Sorry, got tongue-tied there. It's outside of our knowledge and experience. It is a professional skill, and it's one that we don't know. Now, interestingly, we think marketing is common sense. When I talk to coaches, they say, well, it's common sense. And when I kind of scratch a little bit deeper, they tell me that, the answer is to make sure everybody knows what you're doing, to make sure that you are now available as a coach, to explain how the coaching process works to people, and to talk about your coaching business on a regular basis. Now, the problem with that is that if you haven't cracked the part that is an ability to describe the value of coaching in a way that non-coaches can assimilate, then you're going to struggle. And most of us describe coaching in what I call coach speak. So I use an analogy of weighing scales. Every successful business anywhere in the world, any kind of business, has to have two separate skill sets in equal measure in order to succeed. On one side of our scales, we have our delivery skills. For us, that's our coaching skills. But whatever product or service we deliver, the delivery side of our business sits on one side, and we need to be good at that. On the other side of these scales, and they are equal in weight, in value to us, on this side of the scale sits the skills that we need to create the opportunities to do that delivering. And so they are marketing and sales predominantly. They are equal in weight to our delivery skills. We need to be as skilled here as we are here. And for some reason, as an entire profession, we have a problem with that. I belong to a lot of coaching groups on LinkedIn and on Facebook in particular. And when people say, oh, how do we find clients? The comments from other coaches in response to these questions are astonishing. They say, be authentic. What does that mean? Make good connections. They're so vague as to be useless. And there is nothing pragmatic. There is nothing do this and then do this and then do this and then do this about the advice given. Yet, if we were sitting on this side of our businesses, if we were talking about coaching and somebody said, I don't know how to coach, what's the first thing I should do? We would all say, go take a coaching qualification, go learn how to coach. And we would be professionally scathing of somebody who read a book on coaching, now thinks they know how to do it, and set off and call themselves coaches. In fact, we spend a lot of our time getting upset and angry about the fact that anybody can call themselves a coach, because coaching is an unregulated industry. And also, the word coach had an existing meaning when we took it over. So it's actually us that have taken the word and used it to mean something else. And our Noah's mind, it has to just be common sense. It's just business development. That's not as valuable as the delivery skills. That Noah's mind comes unstuck when what we try doesn't work, when casting our net wide isn't bringing us the clients that we think it should. And so what tends to happen, and I have these conversations all the time, this is a frequent occurrence. We try networking with no strategy, no focus, no thought behind it other than that's a room full of humans, I coach humans. And we turn up for a networking event and we're there with maybe 3 or 4 or 5 other coaches. And when we get the opportunity to say what it is that we do, we say, I'm a coach. I can help you reach your goals. I can help you get over limiting beliefs and mental barriers. And we use coach speak. Coach speak sits on the delivery side of our businesses. That's jargon. It's our jargon. And as we know from any other profession, jargon is designed to keep people out, not to bring them in. Imagine standing in a room full of young techies and they're all talking about their techie stuff. We wouldn't know what they were talking about. Most of us wouldn't know what they were talking about, or lawyers or doctors or any other profession. And yet we use coach speak when we're sitting on this side, or we think we're sitting on this side of our coaching business in conversations at networking events or anywhere else where we're having conversations, and we try to describe what we do here. And the problem with that is nobody cares. Nobody buys a process. We don't buy processes. All humans buy outcomes. What's in it for me? What do I get from working with you? And if, as coaches without skills on this side, if somebody says to us, well, what do I get from working with you? We immediately come back to the process and we say, clarity, you'll be able to make better decisions, you'll be able to make better choices. None of those things have professional sum embedded in it. What people hear when we describe the coaching process is, you're offering to have a conversation with me. I could have that conversation with my partner, with my sister, with my parent, with my best friend. And we say, yes, but we have no vested interest in the outcome. Now, no vested interest in the outcome and a professional fee, it's not enough. It's not enough in the mind of the potential client that you don't have a vested interest in the outcome. That's not enough of a reason to pay a professional fee. And so we try to improvise this side of our scales because we're approaching it with a Noah's mind. And one of the fascinating things about this is that we are so clever and we have a blind spot when it comes to client acquisition. We think it should be easy. We think it should be obvious. We think we already know. Now, prior to the internet, you paid people to do your marketing. We never for one moment thought that we knew how to find clients. And the internet arrived and kind of social media exploded. And now we think that if we write something on, for example, LinkedIn, that everybody sees it. And the truth is, that a tiny fraction of the people that we are connected to see it. So if our connections are predominantly other coaches, that's who sees what we're saying. And that isn't going to work. That's not how professional level client acquisition works. It's not how, you know, amateur level client acquisition works either. It doesn't work. There is a process to marketing, like there is a process to coaching. There are specific things that you really must do in the same way that there are specific things that you really must do with coaching. So, we must contract at the beginning of a session, and we must check back at the end of a session to make sure that our clients have got to where they wanted to get to within the coaching conversation. And on this side, the things that need to be there are a focus, predominantly a focus. And the focus for our marketing doesn't mean that we can't sell coaching to anyone who asks us for it. If we choose a focus of, let's say, head teachers who are struggling with overwhelm, for example, if that's our focus, that doesn't mean if somebody else comes to us and says, I'm not a head teacher, but actually I am struggling with overwhelm, do you work with people like me? You don't have to say no, you can say yes. But where your energy and your focus will go is on a very specific target audience or niche. They're synonymous. And the reason that I keep banging on about a niche is having a focus for your marketing is like understanding that coaching isn't about sharing knowledge. It's an absolute basic. It's a basic premise. We are not mentoring in our coaching conversations, and having a focus is the bare minimum that you need to be able to find clients on a regular rhythmic basis. You need that. And that's the absolute minimum. And to go back to this knower and learner's mind, the problem with the knower's mind is that we think we know, so we stop looking for other reasons. We stop looking for more information. And when what we're trying doesn't work, we don't tend to think, that's because I don't know what I'm doing. We tend to think that marketing doesn't work. And we say this while we're wearing our Gucci sunglasses and our Apple Watch and using our iPad. Yeah, of course marketing works. It's just that what you're doing isn't marketing. Now, the learner's mind would say, well, where can I find people for whom this is working? And there are two places that you can find people for whom this client acquisition is working. One of them is monetizable credibility coaches, and the other are coaches who started from scratch and built a coaching practice from the ground up. Now, we work with both of these people, but these are our kind of main people. So a monetizable credibility coach, when we're at coach training, there's often one or two people in that room who have arrived to learn how to coach after a stellar career in corporate. By corporate, I mean large organization. Might be public sector, might be charity sector, but large organization. And that person already has a network of people who know, like, and trust them. And that person, once they've been trained as a coach, can open their little black book and they can go and have conversations with their contacts, with their network, who already know, like, and trust them, and who are often in senior positions, budget holders, and in a position to commission coaching from that person. They already know them, they already like them, they already know they're great at what they do, and now they're bringing this new skill to the table. Wonderful. That's monetizable credibility, and a very small percentage of us have it. Like less than 20% of all coaches trained have that monetizable credibility. For the record, I'm not saying that if you have monetizable credibility, you don't work hard to build your coaching practice. I am not saying that at all. What I'm saying is coaches with monetizable credibility start with an advantage. It's a privilege. They have a privilege, and like all privileges, they find it very difficult to see. And I've spoken to some coaches who've got upset with me because they think I'm saying, oh, well, it was easy for you. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is you're starting from a completely different position than the rest of us. The other place to go to find coaches who've started from the ground up, and so kind of taken a step back and gone, right, okay, let me choose a focus for my coaching business. Let me choose a group of people that I know, that I understand well, and whose language I speak, whose jargon I speak, whose lives I understand. And let me choose a problem that I like to coach around and that I know they are struggling with. And that is a niche. It's the intersection between a who and a what. Knowers' minds stop us succeeding. Learners' minds help us to succeed. One last thing, the difference between knowledge and information. As coaches, we are very good at kind of hoovering up information. We go to free webinars. We go to, our professional bodies occasionally run webinars on business development. We go to, we download PDFs, we read books, we get lots of information. Information is not knowledge. Information is facts. Knowledge is how to sift through those facts, discover which are relevant to us and which are not, and how to apply them. If you would like to glean a little knowledge, may I invite you to join me for my Nail Your Niche challenge. It's running from the 7th to the 10th of September. It's not a kind of 4 full days thing. It's very light touch. There's a 20-minute concept video dropped in the challenge group each morning, and then there is a live Q&A with me each evening at 5 p.m. So the concept's dropped at 7 a.m. UK, and the live is at 5 p.m. UK, and everything's recorded. So even if you can't make it, you can catch up with the recording. The purpose of the Nail Your Niche challenge, from my perspective, is to get coaches to understand that they are looking in completely the wrong direction when it comes to how to market a coaching business. The purpose of it from the participants' perspective is you will get really clear on where your niche is, where the people who would be prepared to pay you a professional rate to work with them, where they are. It's a free challenge. And if you go to yesterday's article that I wrote, or I'll put around this video a link to join us for the challenge that's starting in September. If you register now, you can forget about it for August, and we'll be back in touch nearer the time. So I hope I've explained the difference between a knower's mind and a learner's mind. A knower's mind stops us from moving forward. A learner's mind, which we have cultivated professionally as coaches, a learner's mind is what will move us forward with client acquisition. Thanks very much.